Welcome, Patriots. Hopefully everyone, the thing's popping in good for everybody. Let me throw a thing up there, make sure it's working. Chat. All right, it's going on screen.
You're not recognized. You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized. You are not recognized. Security, we'll hold off, but you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table, and we told you you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room. This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise. His lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him.
Yes.
All right? But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered. For a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
Yeah, man. A lot of good scenes like that. I want to play a little bit of the funny stuff first. There we go.
Any reasonable person who was
actually this is his stupid statement.
Followed.
This is part 2
his
of what I was doing
unhinged
yesterday.
Obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore,
let me know when you pop in.
Although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
In other words, I'm not going to get myself caught, huh? That's what he's saying.
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything you say, 5. Go ahead, ask me a question.
Did you?
That's a full thing there. Okay, never mind. I did that one.
Today's hearing will be theater. I'll sit there, look serious, and plead the fifth a dozen times. When they push harder, I'll lie through my teeth with a straight face. The politicians already know the script. They're in on the whole show, and after a hard day of lying to the camera, Americans will be distracted, I'll walk free, and the politicians will all go back to their donors, their networks, and their protected status. We're above the law. You peasants will get the sound bites, and I get the power.
Yep.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Fauci.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
John.
I see. Well then.
Starting off with a little humor first. Well, some people are coming in. It's funny.
Senator Moreno?
When they're asking him when they were getting on the elevator.
Why do you suspect Fauci's pleading the fifth after testifying 200 plus times before?
Because he's a piece of shit.
Thank you.
Well said.
Why are you gay?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You are gay.
Hey, Pat. Some of these are pretty funny.
Maybe he pled the fifth because his brain was fried for the 15 boosters he recommended everyone else take, but chances are he probably didn't take himself. The man who kept us from our families, our dying elders, and our jobs. The man who forced businesses into bankruptcy and forced seniors to live alone in solitude. The man who threatened that we needed to listen to him as if he were a god. The man who funded gain-of-function research through the National Institute of Health, which ultimately caused COVID. The man who conspired with Obama and big tech to make sure that Americans lost their voice and their right to speak and object to anything he said, testified today before Congress. And guess what? He invoked the Fifth Amendment more than 120 times. You know, by refusing to answer these questions, it was clear that he knew what was at stake. He knew that if he were to tell the truth, that we would have to indict him for perjury based upon the emails, the witnesses, and everything we know today compared to what he was saying to Americans years ago when we were all victimized by him and his dictates. He knew if he lied, he would be charged with perjury. And so he pled the fifth. The man who spent years funding experiments that cut Beagle's vocal cords so they couldn't scream while experiments were done on them is the one who today has gone completely silent. Fauci pleading the fifth today is pure irony. Now this man, Anthony Fauci, is no better than the dogs he victimized. No bark and no bite. May he live in infamy as the man who did everything he could to destroy this country.
I hope karma gets him. I hope karma gets him. You know, the pardon, it's a little bit hard to get around, but I think it was auto pen signed, so I don't know. Tomorrow I'm probably going to definitely be doing something about what's going on with Spain being invaded and their leader, like, welcoming them in. Do you see what's going on there? I don't know if anyone's seen much of that. It's all NGOs doing that, you know.
Senator, on advice of counsel, I plead the fifth and apparently drink it too.
I'm not a drinker, but anyways.
This man is in contempt.
I plead the fifth.
I was kind of waiting for some people to come in a little bit. All right, we're going to do a little Tulsi. Well, yeah, we'll do Tulsi Gabbard next. She made a video just before she left about this.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final...
Yeah, they're mostly coming in from Morocco, which is almost right across the river from them. But the leader is not sending out the National Guard anything to stop them. They're already looting houses and breaking into houses and raping girls and all that kind of stuff. And it's all fighting age men that are coming.
All day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when under oath he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume 3 key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available. Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as legitimate information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives. Now, Fauci didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his sworn testimony. Now, we received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization, and many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by their managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which would not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process, as they made their complaints, and also insisting that their managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where these whistleblowers were coming forward with their testimony, obviously creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world. Now, after years of lies and censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability. The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
Amen on that. Amen on that. Totally piece of crap. So many people died from that. They should bring back the death penalty, if you ask me. I don't know. My opinion. A little more humor before I go on to another clip or two.
I know nothing.
We'll do the boxing.
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth.
All right, let's do a little review of how hard the media was pushing this. Watch this.
You are the unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the
media is the problem.
Unvaccinated who are the
because a lot of these media companies were taking a lot of money from Pfizer and Moderna and them too. So they had to say these things. In fact, they got some people fired from Fox News and stuff because they wouldn't toe the line.
Problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed. are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting.
I lost YouTube channels. So then the election, if you're an election denier or if you're against the jab, those two things, they got you taken down on YouTube, Facebook, all that kind of stuff bad. Sometimes banned for life.
Being vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All the vaccinated folks are going.
Oh, there's still, Tammy, there's still idiots defending Fauci today on the left. They're like a cult.
Going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts, running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free, and so forth.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed.
All you could do is harm the kids if you gave them that damn shot. Some of them died, myocarditis.
Off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
Well, my freedom is being kind of...
It is freedom and personal choice.
Disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
And your own safety.
The day Howard Stern weighed in with a much different approach.
Now, how many of them got the jab and got the China virus several times after that?
Take a look.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say...
In Texas, she was wearing a mask today? Oh, wow. Nothing tells you they're a leftist, but other than them wearing a mask like that.
It's mandatory to get vaccinated. Their freedom.
But you're treading on our freedom and you're making other people sick, and really you're killing other people.
The anti-vaxxers, they seem to have a thing for death and home remedies.
The anti-maskers turned anti-vaxxers are not just putting their own lives at risk. If that was the issue, we could just say that we can watch them compete to win place or show in the Darwin Awards.
We have to start doing things for the greater good.
And how many people that didn't get the jab died from the China virus? Almost none. It was only the ones that got the jab that died from it, pretty much.
Society, and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research.
And don't get me started on the lunatics who won't take any of the COVID vaccines.
Life is too short to be an ass. Life is way too short to be...
And how many boosters are they going to give you? 30, 40? I don't know. Keep giving you until you die?
Ignorant of the promise of something that is helping people worldwide.
Maybe you're doing it because you're disconnected or disorganized. Maybe you have some sympathetic psychological reasons. But maybe you're just being antisocial.
Oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly.
How about if they're the smart ones?
Yes, they are.
Those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
Yep,
the unvaccinated should be taxed. They should pay more for health care.
We need to start looking at the choice to remain unvaccinated the same as we look at driving while intoxicated.
We're going to see, and I've said, almost two types of America.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about...
Whoa. What was all this overcrowding? They were dancing. They were doing all these dance things and everything because they didn't have patients. Patients were afraid to go there. Stupid.
Who gets an ICU bed? That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
Pointing back to the unvaccinated who are really creating a problem in this country, every death that we are...
You idiots are the problem.
...seeing from COVID could have been prevented.
Literally, the only people dying.
Now, if I did this video back then, they'd take me down. I'm almost all the platforms.
Are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you. Shame on you.
Yeah,
I don't know how some of you sleep at night.
Shame on him.
Remember 6 feet apart? 6 feet! Like the virus was walking around with a tape measure. Sir, you're 5 feet, 11 3/4 inches. Everybody run! He's only 3 inches from the apocalypse! You remember the rules? You could sit in a restaurant if the table had a plastic sheet. You could fly if you wore a mask until the plane took off. Then you could take it off so the virus could stretch its legs. You could protest in the street by the thousands. But 2 people at a birthday party, that's a felony. They said follow the science. I followed the science all the way to the bank where the same people who locked us down were buying
Good idea about playing on a loop in Congress. They wouldn't let it happen. But.
beach houses. Meanwhile, Fauci's out there telling people not to wear masks, then
it turns out the jab hurts your immune system.
Wear 2 masks, then wear a mask and a face shield and a hazmat suit just to pick up the mail. I half expected him to come out and say, and for maximum safety, please stop breathing entirely.
You're a liar, Trump!
Oh, wait a minute, folks, we got a heckler.
You're a liar!
Fauci, is that you?
I plead the fifth.
I knew it! The deep state is here, folks. Well, look who crawled out of the underground lab. Dr. Anthony, I am the science Fauci. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the only man in America who can change his story faster than he changes his mask. You told us masks don't work. Then they do. Then 2 masks, then a face shield, then maybe just stay home forever. You had people wrapping their faces like leftover Thanksgiving turkey.
What they desperately wanted, and China wanted, is that mail-in balloting so they could cheat. And that's not just for that election. For all future elections is what they were trying to do.
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth.
Did I play this one? I think I played that one. I'm sorry.
It puts the vaccine under its skin, or else it gets the hose again.
But I plead the fifth!
You're fired. You're fired, Fauci.
Don't I wish. All right, I follow this Becky Weiss a lot.
Watching the left race to defend Fauci right now is objectively hilarious because what are you defending? Fauci himself admitted that the 6-foot social distancing rule was made up, that masking was ineffective, that children were not at risk, while simultaneously bragging about getting the schools shut down, which led to learning delays, developmental delays, speech delays, a mental health crisis for our youth. Did you know that during that period of COVID, there were more youth suicides than COVID deaths? That's true. Did you know that? I'm not done. His lockdowns led to rates of alcoholism, drug abuse, overdoses, and domestic violence all increasing, to hundreds of thousands of small businesses having to close their doors permanently, which helped to facilitate the greatest wealth transfer in modern history. But wait, there's more. How many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people lost their jobs for refusing to take a vaccine that was neither safe,
True, and true.
safe nor effective, quite the opposite, dangerous and ineffective, a vaccine that he wanted to mandate, to force upon the population. He himself said that he wanted to make life so difficult for the unvaccinated that they would have to lose their ideological bullshit and take the vaccine. That's his quote. We're still cooking. Fauci supported businesses.
Does anyone know anyone that got fired because they wouldn't take the jab? I know lots of people.
Is being fined for employing the unvaxxed. People were denied life-saving surgery.
Ellen Lee Zhao, that came on my channel, used to work in government in San Francisco, and she got fired because she would not take the jab.
Because they were not vaccinated. Helpful, useful, effective therapeutics like ivermectin were smeared and demonized because if an effective therapeutic existed, then they could not implement an emergency order. Not to mention the faked hospital records. If somebody died of cancer, but they had COVID, it was listed as a COVID death. If somebody died in a car crash who had COVID, it was listed as a COVID death. If somebody walked into the ER with a broken arm and even had a trace of COVID in their system, it was listed as a COVID.
Yeah, Trudeau and Carney, both up in Canada, made a lot of money off from it. Tons of money.
Related hospitalization. And I'm sure there's more. I'm sure that I've missed things. What are you defending?
Mandated the vaccines, he would quit if they did, huh? Oh, well, I don't blame him. So I'm going to get on a little more humor than Benny Johnson had the Attorney General from Florida on. So he's going after Fauci. So I'm going to play a few more funny stuff and then.
I once got hauled into HR by that snaggletooth Burks lady, after I told her gingivitis would make a great porn name for her.
I would have quit too.
You want answers? I think America's entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. I plead the fifth.
That's exactly what he did.
If it wasn't for those Trumps, we would have gotten away with it. I love chocolate chip. I have hairy legs. I know a thing or two about cockroaches.
All right, I got to warn you about this lady's language, but she's pretty spot on. I got to warn you about the, she was peed. She was peed about this whole thing, so just a warning. This is Ellie Mae.
Listen, I guess some of you guys want to leave COVID behind you, and that's fine. You can do that. Clearly, it didn't affect you the way it did my household. I, on the other hand, I want fucking accountability. I want Anthony Fauci and everybody else who sided with him, who decided that it was a good idea, who lied to the fucking public, who made people like us think that we were just absolutely fucking insane. I want them fucking held accountable. You're not going to shut me up about it. COVID-19, the stipulations, the rules, fucked up my life. My son couldn't go to preschool because there was a mandate that they had to wear masks the whole entire time that they were in school and on the bus. Heaven forbid my child were to take it off, he would be expelled. Kicked out of school until he decided to keep the mask on his face. They wanted quiet submission from my child. You're not going to make me do that to my kid. Especially when they were the ones that were least affected by COVID-19. My husband, who fought tooth and nail to make sure he didn't get the COVID-19 vaccine, was shipped over to South Korea during his rotation and was told by his military command that he would have been stranded in South Korea unless he got it. So when they were done with their rotation, they were going to leave my husband behind unless he got this vaccine, which was force. It wasn't a choice over an emergency use authorization. It's not something that you can require or force on the American people. And it was your decision that did it any fucking ways. I could not properly grieve my grandmother. People in my family who died could not be laid to rest properly. You weren't allowed to hug your family. You weren't allowed to be close to them. You had to keep the 6-foot distance because these little high and mighty funeral directors came over every second that they could and say, oh no, you guys can't be that close. You have to have a 6-foot distance. Being stalked and berated by obese ass Walmart door workers over a fucking mask. Not being seen by my doctor for 28 weeks over a fucking mask while I was pregnant. My doctor losing her shit because I was in a room by myself with no mask on. She was vaccinated and then continued to not see me or make sure that me and my child were good. Asking her the simple question, well, if the vaccine is supposed to protect you, what the fuck are you worried about from me? I don't have any symptoms. I'm perfectly fine. What type of illness are you asymptomatic to where you have to be tested in order to know if you have it, but you don't fucking have it? This is the type of shit that you did to the American people. Let's be real about what COVID was. It was nothing more than a compliancy test, and a lot of you motherfuckers showed just how fooled you would be if they got scary enough. I'm not going to shut up about COVID. Fauci needs to pay for his fucking crimes. And for a piece of shit bitch that has a pardon, there's no reason why his bitch ass should be pleading the fucking fifth. These states need to get together and start suing this motherfucker. Because it's clear Congress isn't going to do shit. So it's time for the states. And I'm pretty sure if the first states were to do it, it would be Florida and or Texas. Sue Anthony Fauci. Force him to answer the damn questions. Why are you pleading the fifth when you have a fucking pardon, a blanket immunity pardon? You have now evaded from saying anything, which should hold you accountable in and of itself.
Was I talking
you
away?
So steadfast in what you believe.
Was I talking away without my muted? I'm sorry. I agree with her, I was saying, and I was answering some of you in the chat there, this and that. I don't know anyone that did not get the jab and got the China virus. The only people that got sick with it that I know of had the jab. That's the only people in my family that got sick with it.
In all of the policies that you were a part of, in every rule, stipulation, regulation. You were so proud of it. You went on every fucking newscast, every fucking night. You were on everybody's fucking screen every day for years.
Yeah, the other thing is, don't you remember the people were shedding the China virus? So stuff like that, they were shedding it.
But now you can't uphold the shit that you said a few fucking years ago.
And the only ones that were shedding it were the ones that got jabbed.
Fuck you. Every single one of you sacks of
Sorry about the swearing.
shit need to be held accountable. Every institution, every hospital who berated and treated their patients like shit need to be fucking held accountable.
Yeah, I grew up in a family of 8 kids. 2 of them got the jab, and they're the only 2 that got sick. In fact, my brother's going to have to go in for his 9th leg thing for blockage in his legs.
This is absolutely fucking insane. So no, we're not going to shut up about it. Because this had a personal impact on my life. A negative impact. And I'm never going to fucking forgive any of you for it.
Amen.
Have a fucking good one.
Well, we got to start prosecuting, going to jail. And I'm going to play something here. Benny Jensen had the Attorney General from Florida on. He's talking about going after him. Here we go.
Auto pen or not, would a federal...
I don't know if these are in order, but it's a lot of the clips I downloaded from it.
...pardon work in the state of Florida?
The answer is no. No, a federal pardon can apply to federal crimes, but not state investigations and state crimes. Here in Florida, it has been eye-opening for us to see the lack of candor, to see the dishonesty, the unwillingness to cooperate.
How bad was it, John? How bad did you get it?
With Congress. And now, you know, the revelations that have come to light, and I want to thank Senator Rand Paul and his colleagues for continuing this fight, to continue asking questions.
Well, that virus was man-made.
And now there's more evidence that shows what many people have long believed, that Dr. Fauci lied and deceived the American people. He pushed and directed that vaccines and these so-called medical treatments were safe and effective, while personally questioning that, personally worrying about that. But nevertheless, because he cared about his own fame, his own fortune, there's very serious allegations that he made money.
I heard if you had the virus and then you took the shot while having the virus, it was really bad for you.
Off of this entire deception, he nevertheless went forward and pushed things on the American people that took so much away from us. Physical harms, economic harms, our way of life. And so there needs to be accountability. So we're looking at any and all violations of state law here in Florida. Nothing is off the table. We'll have a team working on this 24/7.
I wonder if they can catch him in a perjury, lying. You know, he's going to go to Congress and get all that testimony and all the testimony he did in the past and that kind of stuff, you know? I wonder.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see, you know, you taking this step, but you took this step and no other attorney general did. You know, what do you do to stiffen the spine of the Republican Party?
Well, I hope other attorneys general will jump in and follow suit here. I do think the new evidence that's come to light changes analyses across.
And every state's going to have slightly different laws, so maybe they can get them for different things in different states.
Across the country, they're facing a lot of the same legal hurdles I have. You know,
I'd like some people to go back and sue them financially too. I'd like some people to get some recovery on that.
Been dealing with. I'm glad that, in Missouri early on, they did try to hold vaccine manufacturers accountable and government officials accountable. Unfortunately,
you'd think someone that got sick with it, Tammy, would be the one to do that.
You know, Congress did grant broad immunities that it's hard for
only leftists are the sick enough ones to do that kind of stuff, though.
For us to penetrate. But in the states, we have different tools. We have different authorities. We are pardon proof. And again, I think new evidence coming to life that shows how broad the lies were will allow new causes of action to be pursued. So I hope other AGs, I'll certainly be working the horn to get other people riled up because the American people deserve it.
Yep, I agree.
You saying that about having your firstborn during COVID, I mean, the same thing. I experienced the exact same thing. It was a crime against humanity, Mr. Attorney General.
Yeah, and here in Florida, obviously, we lived a different life because we had officials that very much respected individual freedoms, but many did not have that across the country. And even here, we did suffer greatly. The inability to go to church.
I hope so, Tammy. The problem with a lot of these laws, it seems to take too long Now, can Fauci stretch it out until after Trump's out of office and maybe Democrat come in and we'll pardon him again or somehow get him out of it?
Church, to go out to eat with family. Some of these mandates were absolutely asinine, and he knew it. Privately, he knew it, but did nothing. And it's one thing to force this stuff on adults, but evidence also suggests
Sometimes
that
bad, huh?
he questioned whether or not mRNA vaccines were safe for children. But he wasn't willing to talk.
John, I'm glad they didn't give you remdesivir. If you went out to California, they would have given you remdesivir. And they ended up putting fluid in your lungs and you'd suffocated.
Talk about that publicly. Instead, children faced so many.
John, had you heard of ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine at the time? Because both of those things actually improved you. Long term, the ivermectin works better, but the hydroxychloroquine got rid of it like in about a day and a half. So that's what I hear.
Of these requirements. I mean, having to explain to a toddler who's crying and screaming on an airplane why the toddler has to keep putting the masks back on, unless he or she's eating, a cracker, then they can take them off for a minute. Trying to explain like why that makes sense. Even a 2-3-year-old realizes that is
John,
ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Stuff was nasty.
So we lost a lot. Again, the physical harms, healthy athletes falling over on courts after having the vaccines, a lot of the myocarditis, the side effects on children, not to mention the billions and billions in taxpayer dollars.
What about him lying and not admitting that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine worked on this thing?
That were spent on this so-called treatment.
And
then just the everyday costs where we didn't get to live normal lives. We will only just start seeing.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, John, if it still happens.
The learning loss impact for many of those formative years.
I think he's pretty rich and he's got a lot of people around him, though, that it so couldn't happen.
Being stolen from our next generation. So again, we've got a ways to go. We're at the initial stage of this inquiry, but I do think what has been uncovered very recently here shows the intentionality behind the deception, which is
I agree, Tammy, not just him.
A key aspect of any attorney general investigation.
Actually, some of the regular doctors. I had one doctor when I was in for my stroke, and I asked him about, hey, did he take the jab or something like that? And he leaned over quietly and went to me, I took saline. He admitted he didn't take the jab, but he had to take something to pretend that he had the China virus shot, So.
Auto pen or not, would a federal pardon work in the state of Florida?
The answer is no. No, a federal pardon can apply to federal crimes, but not state investigation.
I might have played this one. I'm sorry. Or maybe there's some overlap.
So you announced yesterday that there is a investigation right now into Fauci's actions. What happens next?
That's right. We'll be going through the record we have. We're going to send a plane up to D.C. and get any file they're willing to share with us. Look forward to working with Senator Rand Paul. I know he's eager to find accountability. And then we'll have subpoenas out likely as early as next week, looking into what Dr. Fauci knew, when he knew it, all of the statements and directives he made. We know he's
worth billions, I think.
He's been out there bragging about how he told New York officials to lock down schools, encourage this type of behavior. People listened to him. They were duped by him. And then we're going to look at, his side business dealings, what financial gain he made throughout this deception, through grants, awards.
He applied to get a lot of awards. He was pushing for a lot of awards because of all the stuff he was putting out in the media. Every time he was interviewed, he was trying to put out the scare bull crap all the time.
Any income he had that could have been derived from this widespread effort. But at the end of the day, I think America.
And he was pushing the remdesivir, which killed a lot of people in Africa originally, then some here. And Gillibrand, or what was her name? I'll think of her name in a bit.
American people realize we've lost a lot because of this. As a father of kids, my first child we had during COVID, they wouldn't let me be with my wife for a lot of the appointments in the hospital. They tried to force mask her in the labor and delivery room, constantly pushing COVID vaccines on her, even though she did not believe that they were safe. Not allowing family to be there in the waiting room. These are things that many people lost. And that's not acceptable. So he needs to pay for his lies and deception. We will seek accountability.
Yeah, he's got book money coming in and everything, Texas, Tammy.
With every tool we have here in the state of Florida.
Yep. There's a little bit.
Most people know the name Joseph Mengele, the Nazi doctor, the man who performed horrific experiments at Auschwitz.
Anonymous.
Perhaps the more important question is not, who was he? Perhaps the question is, why do we still study him? It isn't because history wants to glorify him. It isn't because his experiments advanced science. They didn't. Modern medicine considers his work both scientifically unsound and morally abhorrent. So why remember him?
Well, the media played him up as a hero too, John.
Because he is a warning about what can.
In fact, he was going on all those shows, remember? He was on all the shows, such a hero, and pushing for all of us, forcing us all to get the jab.
Happen when intelligence is separated from wisdom, when education is separated from ethics, when science is separated from its moral compass. Joseph Mengele was not an uneducated man. He was a physician, a researcher, a product of respected universities. He understood anatomy, he understood genetics, he understood medicine. But knowledge alone is not enough. Knowledge can heal. Knowledge can also harm. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is character. History teaches us that terrible things rarely begin with terrible people announcing terrible intentions. They often begin with ideas that become accepted, institutions that reward conformity, professionals who convince themselves they are serving a greater good. Little by little, the unthinkable becomes acceptable. And once human beings stop seeing other human beings as individuals and begin seeing them only as categories or obstacles or statistics, the moral barriers begin to disappear. That's why Joseph Mengele is still studied. Not because he represents science at its best, but because he represents what science can become when it loses its moral compass. History does not preserve his name to honor him. History preserves his name so that every generation remembers that knowledge without ethics is one of the most dangerous forces the world has ever known. My friends, we are all anonymous.
Anonymous, that was the word I was trying to think of. All right, I'm going to try to pick this up where I left off, so I got to find the spot
lying
here.
to Congress, so maybe that would be something.
I think it was about an hour 17 into it. Hour 17. Trying to remember from yesterday. There's 16. Okay, we'll go right from here.
I yield back.
Senator Blumenthal.
I'll fast forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to the dark days of the coronavirus pandemic.
This is a leftist. I'm not going to waste time with him.
In your position today that would contradict your prior
Constitution. It's under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you maintain a personal email?
Who helped us, the campaign of continuing.
Charged him with conspiracy against the United States, in addition to other charges as part of a conspiracy to conceal information and falsify records to suppress alternative theories about the origins of COVID-19. Now, you've publicly kicked this man to the curb, saying Dr. Morantz was not an advisor to me on institute policy or other substantive issues. So let's start with the use of personal Gmail accounts and Dave Morantz's relationship with Peter Daszak. Dave Morantz tells Peter Daszak, president of Equal Alliance, and you've got this in front of you, it's Exhibit 1. It's already in the record as part of this. It says, quote, P.S. I forgot to say that there is no worry about FOIA. I can either send stuff to Tony on his private Gmail or hand it to him at work or as house. He is too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble. Dr. Fauci, did Dr. Morantz's relationship with Peter Daszak concern you? Yes or no?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did Dave Morantz ever bring documents to your house?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever receive a text about your work at NIAID to your personal cell phone?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did any text about your work at NID that went to your personal cell phone ever become part of federal records?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you maintain a personal email account while serving as director?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever receive work-related communications on that Gmail account from David Morenz?
I
wish they'd pull up the paper showing that he was getting all this money. That's what they need to do. They need to, okay, how about this money here, and show it on the board, even though he's going to say that crap, you know?
Advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Follow all the money.
Did you preserve any work-related communications on that Gmail account from David Morenz?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did David Morenz ever provide you with documents outside of those two ways that would violate NIH policy for FOIA compliance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
He knows he's in hot water.
Now let's look at two other communications. You emailed David Morenz on January 26, 2020, quote, "It is important that I speak with you tonight. Please call me at home." This is part of Exhibit 2 that you have in front of you. This email is sent the same day, the exact same day you write in an internal document, quote, "Now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier," unquote. Would you call the origins of COVID-19 a substantive issue?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you discuss COVID-19 origins with David Morenz on this phone call?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now let's take a closer look at the last time you testified before Congress. This is part of what you have in front of you is Exhibit 4, which is part of the record. In June 2024, you testified to Dr. Morenz, quote, "Was not an advisor to me on institute policy or other substantive issues. Furthermore, his office is located in a different building from that of the NIAID director," unquote. Is that still your testimony today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So today, under oath, your testimony remains that Dr. Morenz was not an advisor to you on institute policy or substantive matters.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, I've got Exhibit 5, which you have in front of you. On October 24, 2021, David Morenz texted you to provide information about and advocate for the controversial EcoHealth Alliance grant. You thank him and tell him that you will check the information. Would you agree that this shows an advisory relationship between David Morenz and yourself?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Would you agree that you two were discussing a substantive issue?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
If documentary evidence establishes that Dr. Morenz advised you regarding EcoHealth Alliance, COVID origins, or grant policy, then your June 2024 testimony would have been inaccurate, correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Is there any document in your possession today that would contradict your prior congressional testimony?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Have you deleted, destroyed, or instructed anyone to destroy records after learning Congress is investigating these matters?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Are you aware of anyone who did?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
As you know, Dr. Morantz now faces charges related to destroying records while you distance yourself from him. Is that fair to a decades-long friend?
I guess Gregory's trying to find us, trying to come in.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
When is the last time you spoke to him?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
In hindsight, are you disappointed how you handled COVID? Do you have any regrets?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, I want to close with this. Here's how you impacted my family.
He should have just had one of those buttons where he could keep pushing it, huh?
People close to me. I have daughters with children. You can't imagine the questions they had around vaccines for their kids and themselves, and the pressure, the unbelievable pressure to make the right decision for their health. I can tell you pregnant women who worked with me were so scared because every time they went to the doctor, they were told something different about taking the vaccine. And you caused this. Imagine being a mom trying to protect their kids, or an expectant mother trying to figure out what to do. Every 3 weeks, a doctor tells you a new set of guidance on a vaccine. The haphazard information you released and pushed on the American people with little research is appalling, and why there's so much distrust in our institutions today. That trust is crucial to public health, and you, more than any person or event in my lifetime, have destroyed that trust for millions of Americans. You lied to hundreds of millions of people amid the worst public health crisis in a century. You failed to follow your own guidance. You forced people to watch their loved ones die alone over the phone. It's disgusting. You destroyed the federal government's credibility when it comes to public health. We have entire generations of Americans who, rightfully so, do not trust our institution to keep people safe because of you. This has destroyed decades of progress and lifetimes of work because you wanted to fuel your own ego and be the center of attention. What would you do differently knowing what you know today, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The last question was pretty good.
All the evidence is right here, and you still can't bring yourself to tell the truth or apologize because you received an auto-pin pardon from a staffer in the Biden White House. If we have another pandemic tomorrow, millions could die.
Oh, he'll never apologize.
Because of what you did to make Americans lose trust in their government when it comes to medicine and healthcare. How many families have you apologized to had to watch their loved ones die alone? You breached public trust, and now you're hiding behind a fraudulent pardon. Your legacy will not be as a man who has saved America from COVID, but as a man who destroyed the public trust in America's public health institutions in exchange for 5 minutes of fame. This is how history will remember you. I yield back.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci, for coming on out in front of this committee. I know it's not what you would want. It's not what you deserve. I just want to say and start by just saying thank you to you for your strength through this. And in the words
that delineates how we responded in new. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about
through this.
This guy's good. Yeah.
And in the words of Teddy Roosevelt saying, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done
See the
them
leftist
better.
defending him?
The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strive valiantly, who errs but comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumphs of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thank you for your service, Dr. Fauci. I yield back.
Senator Alling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie you're wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple.
They want to make more and more money off from it with all the grants and prizes.
Federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service. You've got the Adelson Prize.
This is the part I thought they'd go after him and prosecute him with. This should be part of it because he's lying on all those applications.
You've got the Smithsonian Award. You've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award. You've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees.
Yeah, they got some of the rules changed so he'd be eligible to win that money.
On federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just
our tax dollars.
Just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law. Didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Federal law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards. And you did all of it. And the worst part is,
heck, he was breaking all the other laws, so why not?
Thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor, and you're playing one on TV, but this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to
Besides
answer
killing
based upon
beagles,
my rights under the Fifth
torturing
Amendment to
them.
the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambaste Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time. I don't know. But what I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fetterman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, I'm not here to perhaps attack you or defend or anything. It's really just more, honestly, I just want to acknowledge I have had members of my family die from COVID, and now I also grieve for people that I've met that have lost their business through the pandemic, and they'll never been.
I'm not sure how this guy reacts to it, so I'm going to hear him out.
The same. Now, as during the pandemic, I was the lieutenant governor, so we were in the middle of all of that maelstrom, trying to find the right balance between protect life and protect the.
I can see some people being fooled for a while buying it, but after a little while into it, you could see that the jab was the one thing that was doing the harm.
Economics and for all of it. And I'm not sure if we got it all right or wrong, but without a doubt, I can continue to question myself. But one that it's not about much more your regrets, but I have one, and that is early on that there was the theory that the virus could have emerged from the lab, and early on that became like a right-wing kinds of theory, and I thought it seemed to make sense. Now there was a really advanced lab that was close by, and then you have this unknown virus.
There's a lot of leaked papers about all that. They developed it over a year ahead of time over in China.
Out.
The lab he was funding.
So, but that became a very partisan thing. And now it seems now it's more and more emerging theory that would have come from the lab. Now, I think that the next time our nation's facing something like this, we are not become, as I might have been, blinded by the partisan idea that maybe the truth might come from a side that's different than you are. But I think we should really be willing to pursue truth, no matter where that may have emerged, after for all of that. So, and I now cede the remain back to the chair. Thank you.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will echo Senator Johnson's comments about your opening statement, Mr. Chairman. I think it was dead on. Very, very well done.
It was at least halfway
Mr. Fauci,
okay.
do you know who David Schertler is?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I guess he lost his memory on who was who, right?
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. What does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution say?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm just...
He tried to trick him into answering something.
Just asking you what it says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon...
No, yesterday, and a lot of people have brought up, since he's got that pardon, he's not supposedly able to plead the Fifth on any of this. Because supposedly he's immune from being prosecuted. So the Fifth wouldn't apply here.
My rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm going to give the Constitution to my aide. He'll bring it over to you so you can have it for future reference. I think
he's probably doing part of this so he doesn't get prosecuted by the states by anything recorded here where he would cause perjury.
It's something that every American should know what the Constitution says. Do you know who wrote the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
So you're invoking...
Yeah, I did hear about the Oregon thing, Kirk.
A right,
or Mark.
You don't know who wrote it or what it says. Is that correct?
I did.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, some say he did this 111 times, and some say 121 times. So I'm not sure. I'm not able to sit there and count them all.
Constitution.
Wow. All right, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues may remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here in the Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Clearly, what you think today is that somehow you're above reproach. Somehow you feel like you don't need to be treated like a normal American. Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic, you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus?
Oh, this part's good. You won't turn around and look at it.
If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap.
If you look close, you'll see Laura Ingraham is back there.
If you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous, the way the mask policy was rolled out. If you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine,
well, he ended up having a heart problem too. The same thing he would get from the jab,
including
I doubt
members
he
of the
took
military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things made you somehow a lesser human being. Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that?
CNN here, Laura Ingraham. There's some military people there. I'm sure you can put thousands up there, really.
That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? That's a question. Are you able to look at them? You can sit down in the audience. There was a mom in Ohio during the depth of the coronavirus pandemic, decided to go to her high school football game for her son. They hadn't been out much. The kids had been learning at school, and then the school got shut down. They hadn't really gotten much out of that education. As any parent knew, that remote learning was no learning at all. But it was a Friday night. Her son wanted to go watch a buddy go play football. So they went to the stadium. They sat alone, far from everybody else, just a mom, a dad, a few kids. They didn't feel they needed to wear masks because it was stupid, because they were outside. They all live together. They're not near anybody. Dr. Fauci, do you know what happened to that mom and that family? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were dragged out of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people. And that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace. So let me ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, I guarantee you'll never get an apology out of this guy. Do you have the dignity to just say you're
Or really any Democrat ever?
Sorry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the business owners that lost their business, shattered their lives, and they'll never recover?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights.
How about all the churches that went down during that time? They let mosques still perform, but they were closing churches on people, wouldn't let you pray there.
Rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the moms who had to force their infant children, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, to put masks on, and what that did and how that traumatized those kids?
Under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the family members of the people who died because they took your advice and not only got the first vaccine, but the 5, 6 other boosters that they did not need?
Yeah, how can he apologize to Lisa Johnson and Elizabeth Todd-Hunter, my friends that died from the jab?
To answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching a football game with her family?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you didn't know who wrote the Fifth Amendment. It's James Madison. Lived in this town. I can only wonder what he would think of somebody like you invoking his writings to shield culpability for the actions that you took. It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere, sometime, you answer for your crimes.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing today. Dr. Fauci, Americans haven't forgotten the tragic stories of people who lost loved ones during COVID and those that were denied a chance to say goodbye to their family members that were in hospitals or residing in nursing homes because of the COVID-19 protocols. Americans haven't forgotten the mandates, the adverse reactions to vaccines.
Yeah, and Cuomo was taking these people that were sick and putting them into the nursing home so more of the nursing home people would die, and then he would save money on that so he could give it to the illegals. So they could get more illegals in here. Cuomo was. And then later, Fauci there.
The government misinformation, social media censorship, hotlines to tattle on their neighbors, the forced school closures, the tragic rise in suicides, or those businesses that were forced to close during lockdowns. Americans haven't forgotten the hundreds of billions of dollars spent by taxpayers for COVID relief, stolen by fraudsters who bought Rolls Royces and yachts. These were taxpayer dollars. Americans have lost trust in science and government after the COVID response.
All of them that were getting all that big money, they all should go. All go. Be prosecuted. Go. Be run through the ringers.
Trust, which will be incredibly difficult for us to gain back. Dr. Fauci, you said that the science was evolving and that your recommendations evolved with it. But Americans remember you as the public face of the coronavirus response.
What about all that data and stuff like that they wouldn't release for 75 years? And you have to sue them to try to get it. And then if you get it, it's all redacted and changed and stuff like that. They knew that this stuff was bullshit.
As one of the nation's most trusted voices, you urged policies you said were absolutely necessary, even when those policies came at an enormous human and economic cost. And Americans deserve answers about reports that you may have worked with others to pressure the president into adopting the slow the spread strategy, and why you later sought an unconditional pardon for crimes you may have committed dating back to 2014. Dr. Fauci, in 2022, you had a taxpayer-funded salary of $480,000 a year. You were, in fact, the highest paid federal employee in the entire federal government, even making more than the NIH director and the President of the United States. According to now public documents, that was due in large part to your work on biodefense. Unreported is how NIAID spent over $1 billion from 2009 to 2026 in biodefense and influenza federal contracts and subcontracts. My office uncovered records on usaspending.gov that show from 2015 to 2020, NIAID paid out $515,418 in subcontracts to Harbin Veterinary Institute in Harbin, China, including $100,000 a few days after it opened a BSL-4 bio.
See, follow the money, prosecute him for the money.
Lab in 2018. That very same institute was criticized for doing gain of function bird flu research in 2013. And yet you were funding them for years after that, sending U.S. taxpayer dollars to China. These contracts, which we also trace to NIAID, show U.S. taxpayers funded gain-of-function researchers in the Netherlands and in Wisconsin, funding the same folks whose controversial work led President Obama to pause this exact type of dangerous pandemic research. Dr. Fauci, did you know that the NIH's billion-dollar Sears contract programs were funding gain-of-function researchers in China, the U.S., and in the Netherlands?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx wrote in her book that you and President Obama's former CDC director were at a Saturday, March 14th, 2020 meeting at her home 2 days before the president announced his 15 days to slow the spread effort. Your now released diaries said the meeting was a week before that. Dr. Birx said you all were trying to trap the president into having no other options. She wrote, your plan was...
The problem with that, Marianne, is he has to sit there and listen to this, but he doesn't give a goddamn care. He's worried more about his ass.
...was to, quote, block any of the president's escape routes. So, quote, he'd have no choice but to agree to our flatten the curve measures. Yes or no, Dr. Fauci, did you try to block or trap President Trump into the slow the spread, flatten the curve measures in March 2020?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
When the
I knew he wouldn't answer that one.
COVID-19 virus broke out in Wuhan, China, you, Dr. Fauci, knew pretty much right away that NIH had funded Chinese labs, including those doing coronavirus research. There's email traffic from early January 2020 where your staff was flagging for you that NIH funded coronavirus research at the Wuhan lab through EcoHealth Alliance. Yet few Americans knew we funded the Wuhan lab because the funding went through a sub-award and was not reported to the public database like usaspending.gov as it should have been. Also, EcoHealth violated federal...
I think there was some intent on doing it that way so they could get more money and cover it up, and then cover up ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine.
Law by failing to report in its research papers how much taxpayer funding it spent on that research. At my request, the Government Accountability Office helped track down that $1.4 million of U.S. taxpayer money that was sent to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, both by you, Dr. Fauci, and through USAID. But first, it passed through EcoHealth Alliance, which I helped to get defunded through the NDAA. Dr. Fauci, did you intentionally use subaward funding to obscure NIH funding of Chinese biolabs and coronavirus research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
NIAID awarded multi-million-dollar grants to a number of scientists shortly after they wrote publicly in the Proximal Origins paper that the COVID virus likely came from nature. Though documents Chairman Paul released last week show in private, those same scientists were much more open to the virus being from a lab. In 2023, Representative...
Isn't it funny? It came from the bats that were within 2 miles of where the lab was. Oh, how does that happen?
Jordan insinuated that you basically gave a $9 million bribe in the form of an NIH grant to NIH-funded virologists to say the virus likely was from nature. Dr. Fauci, yes or no, did you reward the Proximal Origin authors by giving them NIAID grants or contracts?
I decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, we have learned that U.S. coronavirus researchers at UNC shipped, quote, humanized...
Pretty much every time he does that, you might as well just say true, true, true.
...or transgenic mice to China by around 2017 for use in their dangerous coronavirus work. Under your NIAID coronavirus, researchers also used aborted baby body parts in mice research, and taxpayers paid for them to do that. NIH-funded coronavirus researcher Dr. Ralph Barrick and his colleagues at UNC put parts of livers, thymuses, and chunks of human fetal lung that they got from aborted, almost 5-month-old...
We'll still be here for about another half hour, a little more than a half hour.
...human babies. They put those parts in their research mice. They disgustingly named them BLTL mice and wrote they had created a, quote, sandwich of aborted body parts in the mice. Get it, folks? BLT. A BLT sandwich. Your RML lab employees...
So they're using baby fetuses that they killed the babies and put them into these parts to experiment so they could get the bat germ into the humans. That's what I believe is what she's talking about.
In Montana also ordered and used aborted baby body parts in their taxpayer-funded research. And emails show how they plan to use those mice for post-COVID work. NIH funded putting aborted babies' fingers and scalps off the heads of aborted babies and putting them into the backs of research mice. The scalps later grew fine baby hair in the mice. They even included those disgusting photos in their research paper that you funded. Not all of those were research on coronaviruses.
So that's how they got the virus to go over to humans. They wanted this really strong virus to attack humans. It was all planned, all part of China, all part of this piece of crap.
But some were. Thankfully, the current NIH director has said no more of this. Dr. Fauci, yes or no? Do you think that human aborted parts should be put into mice for coronavirus research?
The advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, would you direct the witness to answer the questions that we have been asking?
He probably would if he was here, but I can direct it. But I think we understand his answer.
We do understand that. Americans are asking for accountability, Dr. Fauci, and your silence is very telling. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'm the most junior member of the Senate here, showing from where I sit. I just got here last year. Many of you may remember I was the Attorney General in Florida who fought back against the lockdowns, the school closures, the church closures, everything to embrace sanity and science. We fought back. We got ridiculed for it. And we didn't just call people names. We actually impaneled a grand jury of people of all walks of life, all political persuasions. So that's how I came here, fighting for a free state amongst states that had locked their own people down. We are now called the Free State of Florida. And I believe our responsibility here is to make sure that government remembers the people are our bosses, that we report to them, that we're accountable to them. Government shouldn't operate for itself. Government operates on behalf of and for the American people. And anytime we get close to reporting back to our bosses about what government has done or how it's been abused, or how individuals that are employed by the government had acted in their own self-interest or against the interests of the American people, every time we get close, if we start uncovering outrageous fraud, we'll have a hearing. And the tactics have been to not show up. So you'll have all of us over here trying to drill down on why we've been giving money that actually works against American citizens, and no one shows up. Today nobody's here at the moment. Today there seems to be a different tactic. Today we have Democrats showing up and trying to spin why we shouldn't even be having this hearing to report back to our bosses. One said, today's hearing does damage. It will deter others from public service. Another said, this hearing is designed to entrap you. Another said, one fell all over himself flattering you, thanking you for your service multiple times, quoting man in the arena. Another said that we are demeaning first responders. And today is a sad play in a repeated playbook. Or we're going after one man. I mean, all of their time was used on why we should not be having the hearing to report back to our bosses and give the people accountability. So I would like to talk about that because I believe that the trust the American people place in our public health institutions and what happened to that trust during COVID is important. Because in a public health emergency, they are asked to make extraordinary sacrifices based on advice given to them by the government that is supposed to be working for them. And for that system to work, the public has to be able to trust them.
I say get rid of the CDC.
The people giving them instructions.
Let's just do it ourselves. Don't go to the world ones, you know.
That trust depends on candor. Would you agree with that, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And when the evidence is uncertain, officials need to say so. When recommendations are based on assumptions rather than hard data, they need to say so. And when they get something wrong, they need to own it. And when the trust is lost and the consequences extend far beyond any single pandemic, the next time public health officials genuinely need Americans to listen, millions of people may simply ignore them or not believe them. And Dr. Fauci, you were undeniably the face of the federal government's COVID response. You said so yourself in your diary. You said it's not hyperbole to say, I've become the most famous and talked about person in the country. So I want to understand how we got here. Let's start at the beginning. On March 8th, 2020, you appeared on 60 Minutes to discuss the spread of COVID-19. You were specifically asked to clear up the confusion and misinformation surrounding masks. You told the American people, right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with a mask. The interviewer immediately stopped you and said, are you sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. And instead of walking back or qualifying your statement in any way, you doubled down. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little better. It might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with their masks. They keep touching their face. Just a few weeks later, the CDC released its guidance recommending that Americans wear masks in public. You were asked to explain your original recommendation. You emphasized a very different consideration. You said, well, back then, the critical issue was to save the masks for the people
CDC can go pee up a rope.
Who really needed them because it was felt there was a shortage of masks. So I want everybody to sit with that. The critical issue driving your initial recommendation to the American public was scarcity, logistics, not medical evidence. So when you told the American people there was no reason to wear a mask, what was your principal objective? Giving them an honest assessment of the medical evidence or discouraging them from consuming a scarce supply of masks?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Well, unfortunately, that was just the beginning of a broader pattern. Let's talk about the 6-foot distancing rule. In April 5th, 2020, interview on CBS said, every time I get to that podium in the White House briefing room, I always essentially plead with people. Please take a look at those very simple guidelines of physical separation. And they're very, very clear. Physically separate 6 feet away. Yet when Congress finally asked you in 2024 what science supported that evidence, 6-foot distance rule for COVID, you admitted you were not aware of any studies supporting it. Incredibly, you said the 6-foot rule sort of just appeared and described it as an empiric decision that wasn't based on data. That rule had real consequences. Schools didn't open back up. Businesses didn't open back up. Churches didn't open back up. I could go on and on and on. And Americans were kept physically separated from one another during the most difficult moments of their lives. Many lost loved ones.
Actually, a lot of divorces happened too during that time, and a lot of suicides. A lot of people committed suicides.
Loved ones during that time. So, Dr. Fauci, did you have any evidence to support a 6-foot separation rule when you gave that advice to Americans?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
All right, well, let's look at the lockdowns then. By 2022, the consequences of prolonged COVID lockdowns on our children were clear, from delayed development to social isolation, which is probably why you were asked in July 2022 whether you would recommend locking down schools again. And you said, first of all,
well, could anyone like this sleep at night?
I didn't recommend locking anything down. But now we have your diary, and it tells a very different story from the one you told the public. And I will quote, I spoke with Bill de Blasio, the mayor of NYC, and convinced him based on what I was saying publicly in my conversation tonight to close the NYC schools. He had already decided based on what I was saying on TV. I went on to tell him he should close the bars and restaurants in NYC, and he said he would do this based on my recommendation. You even said that you told the president we should shut the whole country down. So, Dr. Fauci, how do you square telling the American people publicly that you didn't recommend locking anything down with your own diary entry kept on federal government equipment saying that your recommendation is what convinced the mayor and the president to lock things down?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, I just want to make clear that when in Florida, we were pleading with people to give us advice based on scientific evidence, that we were getting these conflicting statements by you.
Scientifically, their bank accounts got pretty full and pretty quick. Plus, they were able to do the mail-in balloting, which they stole that election, and plan to install that to win all the elections.
That didn't match scientific data. And in fact, when we impaneled a grand jury, the grand jury's conclusion, not surprising to anyone, and by the way, we're still the only state to have impaneled a grand jury. I was the only attorney general to do this. We did this in 2023. That conclusion was the lockdown, mask, and social distancing advice ministered by federal agencies and implemented by certain local, state, and federal agencies was not based on the best available scientific data. In fact, many recommendations and their accompanying mandates departed significantly from available research. Again, people from all walks of life, all political persuasions, that is what they found. And yet, during that time, while you were giving those statements, knowing there was no scientific basis for it, and we know now you knew it because we have your diary entries, you called the governor that I worked with to
see, he knew it all along. All along, those communications between all of them knew it wasn't doing a goddamn thing but harming people. But they were making good, big buck, and it was guaranteed government money, our tax dollars.
Fight to keep Washington and D.C. out of our state so that we could indeed respect the rights of our citizens. You called our governor, Governor DeSantis, and I'm going to quote this so I get it right out of your journals, a total jerk, that he is a complete disgrace.
Yeah, Gregory, he originally agreed to the 2 weeks. 2 weeks lockdown and then get everything back open to flatten the curve. But Fauci was constantly pushing for longer and longer lockdown and that kind of stuff. And then a lot of the states ran with it, especially New York was real bad on it. California and New York both were really ridiculous with it.
That he is blocking local authorities from mandating masks in various locations, including schools. And you were very concerned and upset that we were actively, and I'm going to quote, criticizing you. And we talked virtually every day about being wrong on everything. And what is astounding is that you wrote you feared because of that, because we were questioning our government, because we were fighting back for the truth from our government, from scientifically based recommendations, because we were pushing for that. You said you feared that our democracy is in dire danger. Thank goodness we have people up here that I work with that understand our role, which is to report to our bosses, the people, because they are in charge. Calling for our government to be honest with us and transparent with us and accountable to us. That is a democracy. What you did is the opposite. And I cannot believe I have to explain this to someone who represented our government and some of the most important issues for so long. And before I conclude, if I can just put up our pardon. This is the pardon you have heard so much about. And Dr. Fauci, the only other person that got a pardon like this, I believe, had a last name of Biden. This pardon goes back to, and if you'll see, January the 1st of 2014. Did you talk to President Biden and ask for this pardon?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the...
Now, this pardon here was signed by the auto pen. It's identical. The only one that was handwritten was Hunter Biden's.
Constitution.
Who did you talk to in the White House about this pardon?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you specifically ask that it be dated back to the beginning of 2014?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you do that so that you would be given immunity going back to the beginning of 2014?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm just very interested in why it was this date. Did it have anything to do with the fact that 2014 was also the year that the NIAID or NIH began funding EcoHealth Alliance's Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence grant?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based
Greg,
upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
Greg, I bet you part of the reason for the pardon too is because if they cornered him, he might have to talk and throw in the towel on many other people. A lot more people might go down with him.
Amendment to the Constitution.
And this is the same grant that funded the work on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute on Virology. Millions of Americans are questioning what happened during COVID, why we were given misleading information, misleading advice, why you gave conflicting statements based on, I guess, how you were feeling that day. And Americans, rightfully, we lost over 1 million Americans. They should be insulted when the Democrats insult our chair that he is doing this because he is on an obsessive mission to go after one man. Could his obsessive mission be to find out why 1 million Americans died and who might be responsible for that and where that started? Could that be his mission, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
And after everything we have just walked through, can you sit here today and tell the American people, our bosses...
These answers that he's given are all lies. Even by the Fifth Amendment, he's lying because he's not acknowledging what she's proving here.
That you bear no responsibility for their collapse in trust of their government.
Based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Time has expired. We're going to do another quick round for those who remain, about 5 minutes. Any questions that haven't come up that are pressing? Let's try not to go over territory that's already been done. I'll begin by asking unanimous consent to insert into the record documents show that the CIA transferred funds to NIAID through interagency agreement. Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Yeah, Gregory, about a week into it, maybe 2 weeks into it, I wasn't buying this crap anymore, you know?
We had hoped to hear testimony from Anthony Fauci today. We haven't, but I think it's important that we do hear from him. So we will have a video we'll play in a moment. For years, Anthony Fauci has been the public face of saying this in all likelihood came from nature. He kept saying, it's the marketplace, it's the marketplace, it's the marketplace. He's been saying that on television up until recently. But what we find is that what he was saying in public is different than what he was saying in private. In January, in private, he wrote that looks like the wet market was a super spreader event. It didn't originate there. We know that some of the earliest deaths and sickness came from somewhere.
See, he knew, but it wouldn't covered up his narrative.
Else. But then for years and years, we got dishonesty. So let's play the video so we can see a little juxtaposition of the problem we're dealing with.
See, that was 2020, January.
Wild are being brought into wet markets. So there are animals that come out of the wild that are sold at these open, what they call them wet markets. Wet markets, where you bring animals in from the wild who have these viruses.
For those who don't know, a wet market is over in China because they're starving all the time. They buy things like bats and like that to eat. So they catch wild bats and eat them.
The wet markets in Asia, where people bring animals from the forest into market, there are wet markets in Wuhan that are ample opportunity for a virus to jump from an animal. The origin was from a bat to an intermediate opposed to a human.
They survive eating bats and crap and rats.
Should not have been in the Wuhan market. They knew that those animals
That's how communist works.
Not have been in the market, and they immediately cleaned out the market, put restrictions on the kinds of animals that come into these wet markets. I think I should shut down those things right away. I mean, it boggles my mind.
So repeatedly saying in public something different than what he believed in private. And this is interesting because, the first SARS outbreak in 2003 was traced to a wet market, to animals there. But interestingly, they had evidence. They had evidence that the animals had the disease. They also had evidence that the handlers had a disproportionately high number of antibodies to the disease. So there was evidence, and the evidence was presented. So when this came out, the same thing happened again. They did look at the wet market. They looked at the wet market and tested, I think, 80,000 animals and didn't find any animals that had COVID-19. When they did find COVID-19 and trace samples there, they found that the DNA or the RNA was consistent with human spread. This was known not later on, didn't take years to develop, was known in January of 2020. And so Dr. Fauci says privately he knows it didn't come from the wet market, but as you saw, those were over a multi-year period. One of the other discussions I've had with Dr. Fauci over the years about natural immunity. So most infections, you get a degree of immunity, not perfect, some fairly perfect. Smallpox, you just don't get again. George Washington knew this. He had his wife get vaccinated, but he didn't because he'd already had smallpox. But there's one particular story that a man came up to me who'd lost his wife to COVID. He said, we all got it. We all got sick, and my wife ended up getting sick enough to go to the hospital. But we'd recovered 2 weeks. She was still alive. 2 to 3 weeks later, we'd all recovered, and they wouldn't let us be with her. And to this day, it's one of the saddest things. And it just, I think all of us should think about this. They were not allowed to visit their mom. He wasn't allowed to visit his wife in the hospital. But based on this misunderstanding of natural immunity, that for some reason, 2 weeks later, they were a problem. But this was all promulgated by you. We had the workers in the meat factories. They were essential. They had to keep working. Most of them got COVID. They got it in the first couple of weeks. Most of them were younger. The reassurance should have come from public health. The reassurance should have said, congratulations, you've recovered. It also should be acknowledged. What's the number one thing we can do if we get another pandemic? Before we have a vaccine, before we have monoclonal antibodies, it would be to utilize natural immunity. So instead of the advice you were giving to Cuomo and others in New York that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, you could have been saying, well, maybe the nurses taking care of the elderly should be people who are 2 weeks out from COVID infection. We could have used natural immunity as somewhat of a block of protection. Imperfect, but the only protection we had and the only thing we could have done. Instead, the nursing homes were seated with people who had COVID. So I think the discussion of natural immunity is one where there wasn't sufficient honesty, humility, there wasn't enough presentation to encourage people. That was the only encouraging thing we had for a while is you've got it. You're very, very, if not impossible, close to impossible chance that you'll die if you get it again. Everybody could have been reassured. Nobody was reassured. It's like, well, we don't know. We just don't quite understand natural immunity. My favorite quote from that is from Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. You called him one of the people that you had to take down, the fringe epidemiologist, which I've never ever heard a scientist call another scientist that. But he jokingly said on Twitter, he said, yeah, we knew about natural immunity from 486 BC, from the time of the Athenian plague. We lost all knowledge of it in 2020. The good news is it's slowly coming back. 24 to 2025, we're beginning to understand what natural immunity is again. Not something perfect, but a useful tool that could have been used, but also something that could have helped people by telling the public, my goodness, you're not going to die now. You have a chance. If you've already had it and you're 85 years old and you're at risk for it, and you're wanting to feed your wife, and they're telling you.
I hadn't heard about that, Gregory. Exactly. If it was classified, though, would he have been in trouble for releasing it, even though he knew it? It should have been a way to release it, but then that would have been during Biden, and he might have gotten in trouble for releasing it. I'm not sure. I don't know that much about that incident.
Or wear 4 masks and not be around your wife when you've already had it. It made no sense. I visited with a man whose mom was 83 and she was dying from COVID. They go to the hospital in Orange County. They won't admit her to the hospital till she's vaccinated because we have a policy that everybody in the hospital must be vaccinated. She's got COVID and they wanted to vaccinate her again. At one point in time, the CDC understood this. They told people, don't get vaccinated if you've had COVID within 3 months. Why? Because it may give you a heightened immune response when you've already got a heightened immune response. But giving a person very sick, and many of the people who died from COVID died from sort of this storm of response, this immune storm. The answer wouldn't be try to stir up their immune response more by giving them a vaccine. The answer was actually steroids, and good old-fashioned steroids, 37% reduction in death. It turned out to be way more valuable than remdesivir, way more valuable than any of the other treatments. But I don't remember ever hearing a complimentary word on natural immunity or steroids or anything else. And you know, I wish we could have done more today. I would have been willing to accept an apology today. I'm sorry I made mistakes. We all made mistakes. And, you know, at the time I thought the gain of function research was, you know, the risks of it were worth the benefits. But I've reassessed since 15 million people died. People say, well, gosh, these things never happen. We know it happened in 1977. We know with 100% certainty a virus escaped. In 1977, there's something called the Russian flu. Nobody's exactly positive how it got out. But when they sequenced it, they found out that a flu in 1977 had exactly the same RNA as a 1954 one that they had in the lab and they had created a vaccine for. In fact, turns out anybody born before 1954 was immune, and the only people who got it were people who'd been born between 1954 and 1977. But it was identical. The genetic sequence was identical to this vaccine or the virus from 1954, and that doesn't happen because these respiratory viruses are always mutating. To be identical means it had to have leaked from the lab, proof positive that it had. So we know this happens. An author by the name of Young wrote a book and said there was 1,200 cases of significant accidents that have occurred. We knew all of this, and yet it was completely discounted because I think you were worried that if it was seen that you funded dangerous research that started the pandemic, you'd get blamed. And it was a concerted effort. It wasn't just you. Anybody associated with the funding decided we needed to protect ourselves. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that we lost knowledge of natural immunity. I didn't. Dr. Fauci did. I suppose I had an asymptomatic case of COVID because of the very faulty PCR test. I never got vaccinated or injected. There's no way I would have done that because I found out enough about the mRNA gene therapy. But you also brought up the issue of hospital protocols. I'm going to be holding a public event on hospital protocols. We've already received a couple hundred testimonies. They are heart-wrenching. They are heart-wrenching. Here's an excerpt from the testimony of a staff surgeon, very experienced, doctor for decades, at Providence Regional Medical Center, Everett, Washington. Quote, after our hospital was given remdesivir by the CDC, we were provided misleading/inaccurate information about the drug biomedical leadership. When I had a young trauma patient who was a perfect candidate for remdesivir, the infectious disease doctor on call told me to not give it to her because, quote, she seemed like a nice girl. He concludes it was known early the remdesivir kills. As I said, nurses referred to it as run, death is near. So again, I've always been, because it never made sense to me that we put all of our eggs in the experimental gene therapy. If you knew anything about it, you would have avoided it like a plague. And we sabotaged early treatment. But the only treatment we really approved, monoclonal antibodies, which I think basically worked pretty well, but those weren't particularly available. They were denied an awful lot of patients. It was all remdesivir. Based on a study that the NIH changed the endpoint from mortality, because it had no impact on mortality, to days of recovery. A drug that the WHO recommended against its use in COVID in November of 2020, but a drug that cost over $3,000 for a course of treatment, versus things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, who even Dr. Fauci, and I should have got that one out because I want to take this time to enter things in the record, said, we need to have a very tight protocol on remdesivir because it's unknown, but hydroxychloroquine, that's approved, some side effects, but we have a long history of it. Let's put up my latest chart. Again, I was tracking adverse events on the experimental injection, but I use this chart as a comparison. So you've got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, These are average, again, VAERS doesn't improve causation, but there's correlation. It's there for safety signals. So ivermectin, over 30 years of FDA reports, 17 deaths per year. Hydroxychloroquine, over 38 years of reporting, 142 deaths per year. Remdesivir, over 5.5 years, 546 deaths per year. The COVID injection, almost 7,000 deaths per year. Which is safest? What did the FDA freak us out about? Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, when they turned a complete blind's eye toward the injections injury. So I want to enter the quote from the surgeon. By the way, here's the answer. Cheryl Atkinson in an interview said that when it comes to money, we check financial ties among experts on the government panel devising coronavirus treatment guidelines, which had the effect of dialing back hydroxychloroquine use and giving an edge to remdesivir. We found the 11 members reporting links to a drug company, 9 of them named relationships to remdesivir's maker, Gilead. 7 more, including 2 of the committee leaders, have ties to Gilead beyond the 11 months they had to disclose. 2 were on Gilead's advisory board, others were paid consultants who received research support and honoraria. By the way, within the study, I think one of the study participants was an employee of Gilead. A bunch also had conflicts with Gilead. So, gee, I wonder why. There are conflicts of interest. Gilead made billions of dollars off of remdesivir and people died. In terms of ignoring safety signals, you can probably put that down now. This has come to light. This is Dr. Drew Weissman, who got the Nobel Prize for the mRNA platform. He wrote to Dr. Fauci on February 8th of 2020. Tony, I wanted to alert you to some new data we generated with our mRNA LNP vaccine. Now, it was a higher fold dose, but that mRNA LNP go to the placenta and fetus measured by translation of the mRNA and cause of immune response in the amniotic fluid. So that same day, Dr. Fauci responds, it'd be interesting to see what human dose levels given intramuscular do. So about a month later, Dr. Weissman replies, he said, we still have some concerns over the data after they tested it IM. Now, again, there's more documentation in terms of the FDA blew it off. It's like, don't worry about that. That was the whole thing. That's what Peter Marks did when he was shown that his algorithm was going to mask safety signals. The last thing I want to enter in the record here is, and I want to make the point, why is this important? That they buried the treatment of severely injection injured. The fact that we haven't acknowledged these injection injuries, these people can't get treatment. They're being gaslit by their doctors. So it's all in your head. The rate of the injection injured of suicides is increasing because they've given up hope, because our medical establishment and federal health agencies completely failed them, failing to acknowledge it. So again, Dr. Nath was diagnosing and treating injection injured in March of 2021. This concerned people. So you had Dr. Walter Koroshitz, writes Dr. Fauci. One of the points he made, there's been a steady, slow stream of reports to me of post-vaccination neurological conditions. Dr. Nath has been collecting a bunch. He has reports sent out to publish. Well, that alarmed everybody. Boy, you can't let the public know what's actually happening. You can't actually let the public know what the science is showing. So on April 29th, a email from Francis Collins, head of NIH, to Dr. Koroshitz, says, I find this approach troubling and will have the main consequence of feeding vaccine hesitancy and social media overreaction. Then Dr. Lawrence Tabak writes to Francis Collins, I don't understand why Walter does not shut this thing down. Why don't you shut down Dr. Nath, who's actually treating injection injured? Why? Because of vaccine hesitancy. And because we haven't acknowledged that, and the reason I've been advocating for this is because I know the injection injured. I know people who lost loved ones within days of the injection. And we've turned our backs on them. They deserve acknowledgement. They deserve to be heard, seen, and believed so they can get treatment. I also know the doctors whose careers were destroyed because you denigrated things like ivermectin and denied ivermectin to people in hospitals who got their kidneys knocked out by the remdesivir, but got put on ventilators, never got to hug their loved ones goodbye because of those hospital protocols. That's what your science did to people. So, Dr. Fauci, my only question is, based on your lack of testimony here today, based quite honestly on our investigation into the cover-up of safety signals and injection injuries, we have issued letters to a number of former FDA officials to come in for transcribed interviews. You will be getting a letter today asking for a volunteer transcribed interview. So I'd be asking, will you comply or will I have to subpoena you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Expect a subpoena. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Dr. Fauci, did you personally receive any royalty payments connected to COVID-related intellectual property?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that NIH receives royalty payments from certain pharmaceutical companies, why would any American believe these financial ties did not influence decisions about which treatments were promoted or restricted?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Why doesn't NIAID publicly disclose these payments?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you partner with Bill Gates on global health initiatives or vaccines?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How much did Bill Gates entities provide in funding to NIAID collectively since 2000?
Each time he's answering, he's saying he's confirming that he was lying.
5.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
To your knowledge, did Bill Gates partner with China on sensitive research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Specifically, dual-use research such as countermeasures or gain of function?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you know if Bill Gates' entities partnered with U.S. government classified programs?
On the advice...
EM, you weren't here earlier, but a lot of these states are going to come after him. The pardons don't work on the states, and the states are going to start prosecuting him. It looks like Florida's going to be first one on the list.
Of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you know if Bill Gates maintains an active national security clearance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you advocate or request for Bill Gates to receive a security clearance?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Do you have any knowledge that NIAID or NIH through HHS sponsored or requested a security clearance for Bill Gates?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Around 2010, my understanding is that the government shifted its approach to biodefense countermeasure research. Did NIAID, under your leadership, partner with the Obama White House or any other U.S. government classified entities on sensitive countermeasures?
No, EM, as I showed earlier in the show, he can't be using the Fifth Amendment. He can't be doing that. He can be prosecuted for that because he already got a pardon. Once you have a pardon, you can't claim the Fifth Amendment. Not in the federal thing, maybe in the state ones, but he can't in the federal one.
Research.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did your office take steps to drive biological research investments?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What was private industry's take on the type of research in the 2010 timeframe and before?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Was it considered too dangerous to conduct and the industry was hesitant to take this on and invest in?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Why did you take steps to mature the government's approach to biodefense?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Were there any specific lines of effort or actions you felt were needed during this time to improve the research development and fielding model?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How was dual use and gain of function incorporated or accounted for in maturing biodefense countermeasures?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you ever discuss moving gain of function countermeasures research out of government space to private industry space?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How were these private organizations regulated through government oversight while conducting risky research, including gain of function or gene editing technology?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did the Obama White House or any government entities take steps to inject funding into private industry?
On the advice of
Now, some say that he did this 111 times. Some say it was 121 times. I think it's probably more like 121.
counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How do you ensure that our national security and public health is protected when private organizations work with foreign countries of concern and have the no government oversight, such as the Eco Health Alliance research grant you funded in a CCP military lab?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did given the culture of the pay to play at NIAID, did you or anyone acting on your behalf make any payment or enter any arrangement in any way or fashion to secure influence the broad pardon you received from President Biden?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Department of Energy that confirms during Anthony Fauci's tenure that Bill Gates was given Q security clearance from 2014 to 2021 without objection. That will be entered into the record. I'd also ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the contents of the folder of authorities provided to Dr. Fauci, including the pardon. Let's be clear today, what we've seen. I really did want to hear from Dr. Fauci. I wanted to hear perhaps an apology, perhaps some semblance of being sorry for what happened or that judgment errors were made. We didn't hear any of that. But he was subpoenaed here to testify, refused to answer any questions, even after being directed by the chair and being advised of the law requiring him to do so. He has cited a privilege that is unsupported because of his blanket pardon and because he waived the privilege by testifying at the start. I'm going to give you one more opportunity to comply with the law, limited to the period of your pardon. At any point between January 1st, 2014 and January 19th, 2025, did you destroy any federal record or tell anyone else to?
Under the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Given that you have a unlimited presidential pardon, what is your specific objection that you are making?
What a joke.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
Now, he can be prosecuted for contempt of Congress. There's several people that the Democrats have done that to Republicans.
Amendment to the Constitution.
My question was limited to the period of your pardon only. I find your objection unsupported and direct you to answer the question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Because you refuse to answer, citing a privilege that is unsupported because of your pardon, and after being denied to do so, this committee has scheduled a vote next week on a resolution certifying your contempt. I think we have another question or two from Senator Langford.
Mr. Chairman, really, this is a question for you, and it's a question to try to figure out how do we get a good answer on this, because clearly Dr. Fauci's attorneys are saying that he has a Fifth Amendment right. We've also subpoenaed him to be able to compel his testimony to be able to be here. I happen to be in the committee. We're also dealing with Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner came and testified, gave an opening statement, and then took the Fifth Amendment. The committee then held her in contempt for that, saying you can't do both. You can't both testify and say I'm not going to answer questions. So the parliamentary question that I think we've got to be able to deal with is this consistent with Lois Lerner? What she also did when she came before Congress, gave an opening statement, testimony, so made a statement, and then refuse to answer questions. Are we dealing with the same issue here where someone is you can't make a statement and say, I'm not going to make statements at the same time?
I think it's a very good question. I think that's something all of us will examine over the next week. We're going to have a vote next week on contempt. I think there's another legal question that the courts may have to decide upon, and that is whether or not a presidential pardon that offers you complete immunity, that you can still claim that you need protection from immunity when you've been protected. Because Dr. Fauci isn't liable for anything as long as he tells the truth, even if he admits that he destroyed records on a routine basis. His assistant said she destroyed a ton of emails. I think it was a routine thing. I think he destroyed throughout his career, there are probably thousands of emails. Even if he did that, as long as he answered truthfully, yes, I did. I didn't think that was important. I made a mistake. You can't be prosecuted for it. Many of the things are outside the statute of limitations as well. All he had to do today, if he wanted to testify, was be honest. As long as he was honest, even about committing a crime, he would have no jeopardy. But I think the pardon has given him more immunity than most people would ever get. Like if you offer a witness immunity in exchange for testimony, he has blanket immunity. The
Okay,
president
Kirk,
gave him
this has
blanket
only got a
immunity
couple
for
minutes
virtually
left. 2
anything
minutes
he could have
left.
possibly done, while at NIH. So I think we all have to individually answer this question. We welcome you to be part of helping us figure out the question, but there will be a vote, at least right now, though, we plan to be a vote next week on contempt.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Today will be the capstone to Anthony Fauci's 40 years of abuse of power at NIH. In the end, must imagine Fauci believes he got away with it. But still, late at night, even the guilty must become anxious, rerunning the scenarios through his mind, wondering, latching on to lingering doubts, and worrying. Did his actions lead to the largest man-made plague in human history? Are the millions dead the result of his experiments or experiments that he approved that increased the pathogenicity of deadly viruses? History will judge, but the facts, as we now know them, paint a sordid tale of dishonesty, misjudgment, and ultimately the hubris, the likes of which the world has rarely seen. If everyone will remain seated for a few minutes, we're going to let Dr. Fauci exit. Thank you.
Okay, what everyone think? I got to the second part of it. I had to do it in 2 parts, 2 nights. So, all right, everyone, take care. I seen a lot in chat there.
And we are going to continue our live coverage.
I'll be following this tomorrow. I plan on doing my game plan right now, unless something else pops up. Most of it will be on the invasion that's coming in through Spain right now, and their government letting them in. So it's ridiculous. I'm going to be doing some on that. I don't know if I got enough video of that, but I'll be talking about it for sure. Credibility for sure. No. Good night, everyone. Yeah, you too, Greg. Good luck on the job thing, the new job. All right, take care. So, all right, God bless everyone.